Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome to KQED. My name is Ryan Davis. I'm the executive director of KQED Live, and KQED Live is our multi-platform events series that brings journalism to life on stage, amplifies local culture, and deepens civic participation through talks and performances, live storytelling, food tastings, and much more. You can find out about everything that we do at kqed.org/live. Now, may I see with a show of hands, how many people are KQED members in the audience? An awful lot of you, and I want to say thank you. It is support like yours that makes public media possible, and we need it now more than ever. I just have to say I'm really grateful that you're all here tonight to share in our programming. If you are not yet a KQED member, you can get all kinds of benefits, including special early access to event tickets. You can find out more at this QR code or at kqed.org/donate. And we, of course, have a few great season sponsors to thank that make our programming also possible. Comcast Business, Genentech, and the San Francisco Symphony. We're very grateful for their support of our mission of civic and cultural engagement in the Bay Area. And one of those sponsors, Comcast Business, powered a mobile quiz that you might have played before the event tonight. And the winner, or we've selected the top 2 score getters for a couple of giveaways. The first is a KQED Live tote bag and the book that our team behind the Bay Curious podcast released. The winner of that is Xiangwan Huang. Are you here? Raise your hand and someone's going to bring out the tote bag for you. Are you here? You might not be here, and you might be a sneaky person online playing this game. So we'll find your email address and find a way to get this to you. The second winner is Lauren Nelson, and Lauren Nelson is winning a pair of tickets to a concert by composer and songwriter Zoe Keating at Bimbo's 365 on Friday, May 16th, provided by partners at Another Planet. Lauren, are you in the house? We don't have physical tickets, but we are going to email you the details and get you set up. All right, so thank you everybody for being here. Without further ado, I'd like to bring to the stage, she's the host of Forum, KQED's flagship cultural affairs program on 88.5 FM, Mina Kim.
Oh, good evening. What a pleasure it is to be with you tonight as we go behind the scenes at the San Francisco Opera with music director Eun-Sun Kim. The SF Opera is a more than 100-year-old institution and is beloved. And if you're new to opera like me, tonight you'll find out why. And if you're a longtime opera fan, I guarantee tonight will make you love it even more. So what better way to start the evening than with a performance? It is my pleasure to bring to the stage soprano Olivia Smith, accompanied by Julian Grabarek on piano. Olivia will sing the opening aria from Mozart's Idomeneo. Wow. Another. Bravo. That was incredible. Olivia Smith and Julian Grubarek. And now it is my great pleasure to invite to the stage the panelists from San Francisco Opera, Matthew Shilvock, Eun-Sun Kim, Elena Park are with us tonight. Matthew Shilvock is San Francisco Opera's general director, overseeing the second largest opera company in the United States, with a passion for telling profound stories of humanity through the art form. Elena Park is a filmmaker who directed the documentary A Journey into Lohengrin, which you will see this evening. And it's about the massive undertaking of performing Wagner's Lohengrin at SF Opera. And of course, music director Eun-Sun Kim is with us. She studied conducting in her native South Korea and in Germany before beginning her tenure at SF Opera in 2019, following a company debut of, quote, astonishing vibrancy and assurance. This is according to the San Francisco Chronicle. So let's give them a warm welcome to the stage. Matthew, tell us about the song we just heard and why you all chose this for us to hear tonight.
Well, that opening aria there from Idomeneo, Mina, is from one of the operas we have coming up this summer in June. So we'll be back on stage. Eun-Sun will be conducting that opera, and it's a great piece. Mozart wrote that when he was only 25 years old, and the opera just has these amazingly deep and powerful themes. You have two young lovers, forbidden love because they're from opposing sides of war. That was one of the young lovers we heard there, Ilya. And then you have a king who makes a pact to save his ship at sea, but that pact actually is the death sentence for his own son. And then you have a spurned lover who tries to upend everything, and there's a sea monster for good measure as well. So it's a great piece, and that aria we just heard, Ilia is being captured. She's on the island of Crete, and she is sad that she has lost her father, her brothers, her family, but then she's also saying, and I kind of fell in love with the son of the enemy as well. So
the drama.
moral dilemma.
And the two incredible young artists we had on stage, they're Adler Fellows?
They are Adler Fellows, named after one of the legendary general directors of San Francisco Opera, Kurt Herbert Adler. And it's one of the preeminent training programs in the world for young professional singers. We have about 10 to 12 singers and pianists each year. And they have a huge amount of training, not just in voice and music, but also in drama, in breathing, in languages, diction, and even things like financial skills, so that hopefully by the time they finish, they are well equipped to take on the world outside.
Yes, because it is a tough world out there, a competitive world to have a musical career, right? And so I know that you have a lot of respect for what singers have to do. What do you find that most people don't realize is required of an opera singer, from the physicality of it to everything they have to learn?
Well, the first thing that I would say is I didn't want to be an opera singer. And because I was so nervous on the stage, or even in a family gathering when I had to sing for my family, my face was very grumpy and got really nervous. My voice got really trembly, and that's the thing. The first thing is probably the breath that you have to control. And the day like today, the weather is so gray and it's raining. The first thing probably you notice physically is your voice is really tired when you get up. And if you can imagine that singers have to deal with their voice on every performance day, and even for a matinee day, so if the matinee starts at 2 p.m., they have to get up probably at 6 a.m. to warm more of their voice and make that fit, and that's why probably I'm also visiting their dressing rooms before each show to check in their conditions and how they feel every day, as I feel also very differently every day physically. Sometimes when you are tired, you are like under pressure, you want to be really going faster, probably intentionally, because you don't want to drag the whole thing because you feel tired. And sometimes the result is the opposite side, but all that matters, and that's the probably the most interesting thing for me, to have one piece in the run, like 8 to 9 performances, because it's the same piece, but every performance is therefore very, very different. The outcome is different, and my orchestra and our team, we're very aware that all of you, the audience member, will probably hear it for the first time, while we are actually playing it again and again. So my goal probably every night is to make it really fresh for everyone in the audience.
I did see that you will meet individually with each singer on a performance day. How do you apply what they tell you to your conducting that evening?
Well, I pay attention to their physical rhythm. Actually, the opera process, making an opera, takes a long period of time. So they usually rehearse the singers 4 weeks, and then the orchestra joins, and then we have the stage rehearsals, and then the run starts. So during those 4 weeks of time, probably I'll get to know them better, and their habits, and their probably concerns as well. So I have that in mind, but before every performance, you have to ask them. So you have to have that access to the singers as well, so they can share it with you.
Yeah. Elena, a lot of the documentary that you made, Journey into Lohengrin, really does give us a sense of how Unsun approaches conducting. And actually, I just want to give our listeners a little taste. Let's hear a clip, actually, of someone describing the kind of atmosphere that Maestro creates with her conducting.
Without viola strings, only 9, 3, 4. Yeah, that's the rhythm. More simpler.
It sounds funny to say, but she's forced us all to listen very carefully at all times to each other, to the people on stage, and to the pit. A lot of what she did at the final rehearsals, I believe, was creating an environment where we're becoming increasingly aware of the bigger picture. It's very easy to get really lost in the difficulty and length of what you're doing.
And so, Elena, the piece, the performance, the opera that ended up being the subject of your documentary is Lohengrin, which has been described as a musical Everest. Can you talk about why it's been described that way and how it came to be the performance that you focused on?
We knew we wanted to do a film following Unsun Kim and to give audiences an idea of who she is as an artist and her approach, and also what it takes to be at the center of an undertaking like an opera with all of its pieces. And at the time when we started filming and gathering footage, Trovatore, the Verdi opera, was in the house, followed by Lohengrin. And Matthew and I discussed ways that we could approach this. One of my first ideas was that we could do something along the lines of 32 short films about Glenn Gould, where you would just see vignettes about Unsun in different circumstances with different people collaborating. But once Lohengrin started, there was just all this amazing footage that emerged pretty quickly, and I was sitting in a lot of the rehearsals with the orchestra, staging rehearsals, and then you realize that the spine of the story could be Lohengrin. And as far as what Wagner did, it's an opera that's more than 4 hours long. It's a huge, I think you called it a massive undertaking in your comments. It's like an Olympic feat to pull off. And when you're making a film, you want to do something where it's really, really, really difficult and the stakes are high. And with Unsun kind of at the center, we got to see the work and also see all these different personalities around the opera house, people that you see on stage, people you kind of see in the pit, depending on where you're sitting, and then all these unsung heroes that are doing all these jobs backstage that make it possible for Unsun and the artist to deliver these incredible feats of performance.
Matthew, I was hearing Maestro say that she works with the singers for 4 weeks. So how much time does one actually have to pull off an opera like this? Because that's much shorter, say, than like a Broadway musical.
Right, I know. From the minute you begin that process, it is a very quick journey. And as Unsun was saying, about 4 weeks in the room, and then once you get onto stage time is so valuable, and you move so quickly. And so we'll begin with rehearsals with just a piano to begin with, make sure all the technical elements are working, and then a couple of rehearsals with the orchestra, and then a final dress, and you go. And you have to have everything ready to go before there's no time to say, oh, can we change the scenery around? So you have to do all of that work in advance, and there's no preview weeks or anything like that. So you're straight into it, and opening night, everything has to be perfect in that moment. So no, it's a lot of preparation so that when you get on that stage, you're using every second to the very best effect.
Yes, and Unsun, I've heard you say that it's really important to you that your performers feel free. What do you mean by free, and why is that so important?
Free, well, that's actually very difficult to be free on stage.
Yeah.
But because we're so trained over weeks, probably, when you're there, probably you're not thinking anymore, let's say, for the orchestra or the singers, oh, now I have to do this millimeter, like whatever the way is, like technically, there is a stage or the point that you get to forget about those things. So then we can ideally be freer within a room that is allowed to be free. It's not that we do everything differently, but there are certain rules that promises that we did and as we rehearsed. But you know, when, as I said, the condition of each day is so different, and if you want to follow that, only that rule, not giving yourself really the confidence that you can be different on stage, it will the artistry will be very different.
Like by definition, it almost inhibits your best performance or something like that.
I guess.
You're not just working with singers. You're not just trying to make singers feel free. You're also trying to make this massive orchestra of musicians feel that way as well. And actually, I want to play another clip that shows you working with musicians on a very difficult part of the musical score and the consciousness you have about what is required for the musicians to be able to fully give themselves over to the piece.
There are musical challenges, and then there are technical challenges that Wagner puts in all of his operas. And one of them, he makes us play these triplets. There
are a couple of pages that are notorious that maestro knows about too. They're 2 pages of constant triplets. And you don't stop. It's like the most difficult endurance test.
Thank you, thank you. So you play the triplets only once, well skipped.
It's a whole page, and it's very effective when it's done well, but it is so hard.
She would say, when you get tired, just drop out, interplay with your section and not injure yourself, and certainly during rehearsals also not to expend everything, to leave it for the performance. There's a certain amount of bravado that happens in the orchestra too, like you're trying to get through it without having to stop and trying to get all the key changes. But she was very cognizant of that aspect of taking care of ourselves physically.
From where I sit, everything for me is audible. I can't see action. I can just hear emotion. You get involved with the character, but she only takes it so far. I've seen conductors take it. They are the character. They become the character, and all of a sudden, there's no beat going on. But she takes it just far enough, but she never loses control.
Vincent, what is the musician talking about there when the conductor gets totally lost?
Before probably I go to that point, I think you just saw this amazing triplets that all the strings are taking, or the wind players, and they have to go minutes of this. And the conditions that I'm talking about, whether it's singer or musicians, sometimes it's like when you go workout, sometimes you feel like your body is so light and it's just working without thinking. So sometimes I can see the musicians, they are taking from the top until the end of this period fully, very in a light way, in a simple way. But the other day, it can feel really, really hard. And, I'm so tired, I have to take a little break or something. To go to the point of no beat, so there is a rule, as many of you might know. So 1 is down, 2 is left, 3 is right, and the 4 is up. So that is actually very important to keep as much as you can to keep that way, because in an opera performing, the orchestra is not on the stage, but they're in the pit, which means it's wider, and it's probably it's not as deep as you can go on the stage, the orchestra. So probably the last person in the first violin on the wall and the percussion player on the other side of the pit, they might not know when you go like instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, like when you do 1, 2, 3, 4. They will never know whether you're a 1, beating 1 or a 2 or a 3 and 4. And as the conductors can get also very emotional, some conductors might forget.
Has that ever happened to you? Has it ever happened to you?
No. Hopefully not. Because that's about multitasking, and I'm probably too cold in that sense that I know exactly, because I'm carrying this 200 people just with my baton. So everyone is following with not just the orchestra or the singers, but stage managers backstage. They're all watching the screen of a conductor, and the cue is falling right on the second when I beat 1 or 2. So I can't have that kind of, So.
Elena, as sort of I'm visualizing what Maestro is describing, Lohengrin has musicians in 4 different locations in the opera house, right? Can you talk about what you were trying to show in terms of just the scope?
So there are moments where when you're watching, there's a dramatic thing happening and there are musical effects. And when it's beautifully rendered, you're just feeling the swell of emotion based on the drama, and you're getting carried away by the musicians or the singers. And Unsun, who is always conscious that she's the leader, and so she's very, very focused in giving everyone what they need at all times. So one of the biggest feats in Lohengrin has to do with musicians that are scattered in all parts of the building at different times to give certain dramatic and theatrical effects. And so one of the things, when we realized we could put cameras everywhere, the media department, I just said, everywhere there's a musician playing, could you please put cameras there? And they're like, okay, we only have like this many cameras. I'm like, even if it's a GoPro, really, we need it in real time. And they're like, okay. So then the editor, Steve Majorca, he could stitch together something that would give everyone a window into what it took at that particular sequence of a few minutes to pull off something. And what was interesting when people who actually worked on the production saw the film, they're so focused on their task, they don't know exactly what everyone else is doing. And so it was one of the pleasures of being able to capture it and have a scene like this for everyone to be like, you're doing that, that's happening, that's where you were? Anyway, that's the clip that we're going to
Yeah, we're about to watch a clip that's going to show exactly what Elena is describing. But, Matthew, one of the things that it also makes one realize is that this is the kind of opera that you can only do in a large opera house, right?
It's the forces, and you've already begun to see some of the forces in the clips we've seen already. It's vast. I mean, Wagner's operas are these vast epics, often actually very intimate stories, but told in these vast worlds. And so we're talking about, a chorus of 80 people, an orchestra of about the same, a vast amount of stagehands backstage to make all of these things happen. So you need an opera house with those capabilities, but also with the level of excellence to pull off what you are seeing here. There's only a few companies really who have that caliber, and the tradition of Wagner. Wagner in San Francisco goes back to the 1920s. So this is a tradition that has been building, and then to see that now shaped with Unsun and how she is taking that and morphing it into a new tradition is extraordinary. But it requires a musical leadership that can pull all of that together into this amazing synergy, but also coming back to that idea of freedom that has the emotional capacity in it as well. It's not just a technical exercise. It's this amazing emotional outpouring. So no, it's amazing to be a part of a company that can pull that off, and how incredible that we have that right here in San Francisco, in the Bay Area.
I love that they've been doing it since the 20s. It's like go big or go home. Let's see the clip.
We have musicians essentially playing in 4 different locations. We have the orchestra in the pit, and then we also have sets of trumpets on each side in the organ bays so that the audience is hearing those to the side and behind them. And then we also have musicians behind the orchestra in the torpedo room. And each one of those locations requires a separate conductor. And although they're spaced far apart from each other, they're all trying to kind of lock into the same pulse. So I would say in the history of Lohengrin, probably the number of times this music really sails off without a hitch are few and far between because it is so fiendishly difficult. But it's also one of the most exciting things to try and aspire to, making that music leap off the page.
How many trumpets are all over the hall playing? And I'm sitting there thinking, you know, is that train going to come off the rails? Or is the trumpets on the left getting a little ahead of the trumpets on the right? This is happening every night. She's controlling all of that. And you could hear it. She's like, oh, back. I'm just sitting there thinking, it's going to happen tonight.
Elena, you have called making an opera, or maybe others have actually described your depiction of making an opera in this way, but really a celebration of collaboration.
Oh, yes. A friend of mine saw the film and called it a treatise on collaboration. And I love that because whether it's opera or it could be a sports team, it could be, a surgical team, it's all of these people, human beings striving, doing their thing as well as they possibly can to plug into a whole. And I think that's the beautiful thing about opera. I mean, symphonies and chamber music, and there are many, many beautiful expressions of music, but opera, it's like costume and stage management and musicians and, set design and all of these things all together creating one hopefully enthralling artistic experience. So I feel that what the film does, you meet a bunch of people who are doing very, very different things, the stage manager, the prompter who we'll see, and they just toil away and they work with maestro and other people to refine, and as Matthew said, for something so complex, you only have a few weeks to try to get it right, and then things develop over the course of a run. But that's why I think it's something about collaboration. So I think whether you work in theater or any other field where it requires a lot of production, a lot of people focus on different things that make a whole. Yeah. I think it's kind of satisfying to watch what these artists do together.
Satisfying to watch, but also do you find that earnestness to put on such an incredible performance, to give your all for the audience to be part of this incredible production or creation, also sort of pushes back on the idea of opera being something sort of inaccessible or elitist?
I know these two probably have thoughts on this. I think that it's just more tradition and the foreign languages. It feels inaccessible, but if you like music and you like theater, you're just in for a great ride with opera. So I feel like if you approach it the right in a certain way and make sure everyone feels welcome. And there are great stories in the Opera House that are on stage, and then there's great stories to be told about all the different people, working on their part of it. So I don't know. I think it's very human, very moving, very accessible in people's hands who do it as well as this company is able to do it.
And Maestro, I've heard you stress that opera is an interaction with the audience. The audience is part of it.
It is. Because as Elena said, it's all about storytelling. Of course, I pursue for like the perfection of the music or the sound, but it really is about storytelling. And you can actually feel, although I can't see you in the performance, you can really feel the energy of the audience. And the musicians and we also, or music staff, we talk behind the stage during the intermission, like, oh, today's audience is so focused, or today's audience is so, we know you. Although we get a sense of each night's audience as well. So that's not just we're performing and you're listening and sitting back, but you are a part of that storytelling. And you know, once the music or the sounds really leaves from my hand and from our musicians' hands, I think it becomes all yours. And I always love listening to audience members at the backstage door when I come out. Like, each one has so much like a story to tell to me, like, oh, in that act one, I don't know, that moment, it was so this and that, and did you intend like to do it? Like, everyone has different get out, like they're getting something differently, and their interpretation or your interpretation is really becoming making that storytelling. It's not just how I intend, but probably all of you have some feelings and understanding of the story. So inaccessible probably because I am the only musician in my family as well, and that's that kind of difficulty to get into the building is because they're also not familiar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they don't know what's going to happen inside the door or the etiquette, how you have to behave or dress. And I think that's all that we can probably approach towards the audience. So once you're in, and I think it'll be not that difficult. There is no barrier for music. Yeah.
Elena, you mentioned the prompter, and I do want to play the clip of the prompter. Is there anything you want to say before we see it?
I would say that he's not ID'd on this clip because we see him earlier in the film. It's Matt Pyatt, who has since become promoted to be the director of musical administration. But the number of things that he has to hold in his brain, people's lives in their hands, you'll see what I mean. And I think that the level of detail for someone like Matt and Unsan, who are working in tandem over the course of 4 hours, is extraordinary. And I just want to say that I asked him when I interviewed him, so in the curtain call in Lohengrin, the final night, were you like, yay, were you excited? Did you feel satisfied? And he said, I was running the notes, the lines in my head for Elixir of Love, because we had a rehearsal in the morning. And so the minute the curtain went down, he's already thinking of the Italian lines that he has to go through at 10 in the next morning. And that's how he rolls. But you'll see him. And I would say, in case it's not clear, he's under this, in the level below the stage. So if he would be right here under a little hood. A friend of mine calls him the man in the cave.
Let's see the prompter.
Prompter is like a second conductor. The singers are very busy, and they might forget a word just because we're human beings. The prompter's function is there to support them in those kind of moments.
Die Hera, die Wunder, die Kraft.
The main thing is I have to sing all of the parts over and over until I can close to memorize them and just rattle them off kind of automatically. There are some people who are doing their roles for the first time and they have prepared very well, but they're being thrown so much information. I'm just kind of there to help them.
In Licht.
That was a role I had no idea existed. I watched your documentary, Elena. Just incredible, and just the idea of like
right after that, the mezzo-soprano Judith Kutesi, she said, she's like, the minute you begin to lose the words, she said, I look at him with my googly eyes, and he says, she said, you know he will save you. That's what she said.
So, Unsan, I want to get into your personal background a little bit. You've dropped a couple of hints that you would get very nervous performing. You started out playing piano, right?
Right. But I already knew that I was not going to be a performing artist because I was always nervous on stage, whether singing or playing piano. But then I majored in composition. I stayed with music, so the composers don't need to be necessarily on stage. They just need to bow at the end. So, so I majored in composition, but I always stayed with the singers or instrumentalists, so accompanying them in their lessons. And then I ended up playing piano like a coach for La Bohème production at my university. And that was the moment where my teacher kind of discovered the talent in me that I could be a conductor. So I started.
What did your teacher see?
I think I asked him, and afterwards, and he tested me with my hearings, ears, whether I had good pitch or like, and also how I worked with the singers, how I rehearsed with the singers. And then I think the last thing was that he probably saw my character, my personality. That I recognize. I'm very realistic. So I knew when he suggested that I was just studying conducting, but it was not like, oh, I'm going to be a conductor. So it was not about the job, but it was about learning that studying music with conducting. And he told me, a lot of students, when they start majoring in conducting, they act like they're already conductors. But you were different. You knew exactly that you were just a student who is now just studying and delving into the scores probably. So I think that's how he made me a conductor, to be a conductor.
Mina, can I?
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories that Maestro shares in the film was about managing emotions at that time. And because the comment Rufus made about there's no beat going on and the management of emotions, can you share that?
Right. So when I was accompanying at the piano in that Bohème production, at the end of Act 4, last moment in a Bohème, I used to cry a lot. So the moment that I knew that, this scene is coming, that Mimi is going to cough, and I knew, then I started crying, and I ended up sometimes like crying really loud, playing piano like, and then, like tears in my eyes. And then my teacher said to me, like, you should stop crying, because and you can't be a conductor if you get that much emotional. So you have to control yourself. You know it, but you have to control what you have to do with your brain. And then you still have that passion and love for music and for that moment, for that storytelling, but you can't just be there. Like, I sometimes talk about those emotions on the stage with the singers, because they are the ones who have to speak the text as well, the lyrics. And I sometimes say to them that sounds like a self-pity. It's if it becomes too emotional and they take care too much about their feelings, like the singer's feeling, not the role's feeling, it becomes very personal on stage. And that was including my experience, like there was the moment where I was in the audience and I said, okay, that suddenly I lost the role of my figure in that storytelling, but all I saw was that singer. So that's kind of how we have to handle, and that's about the beat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I understand that you are the first woman and woman of color to conduct, to be music director at a major opera company in the US. And I know this is not something that you dwell on, but is there a part of that that is personally meaningful to you?
You know, I mean, we're Koreans, but
Honorary.
almost Koreans. We actually had a joke because I told them, when you hear Koreans say like, oh, no, you have to understand it's actually a yes. Because we just want to be very polite, so do you want it? Oh, no, but it's a yes. So in that sense, Matthew might understand that because he's British.
Exactly. What you say is not what you mean.
So, you know, I oftentimes say in the interviews that no one in the world, including all of us, chooses actually gender or ethnicity before we are born. I happen to be born to a Korean family as a daughter, and I'm actually very proud of who I am and of my family and my parents. So, yes, the audience might feel very different or fresh to see an Asian woman on the podium, and I noticed that more and more actually whenever I have concerts elsewhere, young kids are waiting for me, especially the girls. They're waiting for me at the stage door, and they say like, "Oh, I want to be a conductor as well," and they don't know what they're actually saying. They have different, you know. I mean, not about the job, but I would never had said when I was probably 5-year-old, I want to be a conductor, because that didn't exist for women. And even when my teacher asked me, would you study conducting with me, I was shocked, because I've never seen any female conductor until then. And I knew that there was one, like Simone Young, and but it was very, very shocking, actually, that woman could take a conductor as a job. But now it's becoming normal, probably. So last week I was in LA with LA Phil, and before the first rehearsal, 2 young ladies came to my room, and I just automatically, probably I'm now also getting older, so automatically thought they were from admin offices, but they told me they were assistant conductors. So I realized, oh, it's happening. So yes, but I'm probably how should I say? I feel like the weight of I should be better in my music making, so the next generation can really dream that yes, women can also be the leaders or the conductors.
So you do feel that pressure a little bit?
It's not the pressure, because I put a lot of pressure on myself anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not just about women or being a female conductor, but and one day probably it will become really normal. I think I said also about my grandmother when I was announced to be the music director at San Francisco Opera, because my grandmother was born in 1912, and she lived actually 100 years. So she died 2012. But she was one of the first female doctors in Korea. And we used to call female doctors, like in Korean, female doctors. But by the time that she passed away, that word disappeared.
Female,
actually.
the word
female,
female,
right.
yeah.
So everyone is just doctor, but not female doctor anymore. So I guess the conductors will follow that too, I hope.
Well, I think I'm so glad, Matthew, that Unsun's been mentioning La Boheme a couple of times just a little bit ago, because this feels like a lovely moment to hear another performance. And in fact, it will be from La Boheme.
Yes. We're going to hear from two more of our Adler Fellows. Julian will be back on piano, and then Caroline Corrales, second-year Adler Fellow, and Samuel White, who's a first-year Adler Fellow. He's just begun a few weeks ago with us. And Bohème will be back on stage in June next to Idomeneo, so coming up soon. So we're going to get a glimpse of what's to come. And of course, Bohème is just the most incredible, timeless romance, and of course tragic romance. As Unsun said, we end with tears at the end. But this is from the beginning, and this is the sequence that takes place at the end of the first act. We're set in this drafty garret in the rooftops of Paris. It's Christmas Eve, and this group of artists is living in this garret. And at this particular scene, the other artists have gone out. The poet Rodolfo has stayed behind to write a few more verses. And a knock on the door happens, and it's that proverbial cup of sugar moment. And Mimi has just moved in, and she's not asking for sugar, but she's asking for a light for her candle. And the two of them have this sequence, and we have an aria first from Rodolfo, and he introduces himself as a poet, and then Mimi introduces herself as a seamstress, and then we move into the duet we're about to hear, and they suddenly realize that they're falling in love. Now, in opera, it takes people a long time to die. But you can fall in love very quickly. And this is the most passionate love, and they just realize that they have this great affection for each other, this great love for each other. And then at the end, we hear the music begin to fade away, and actually, oftentimes, in the staging, the singers will exit off stage and they'll sing the last line from off stage because they're leaving out into the Paris night on Christmas Eve to go and join their friends at the cafe. So it's just this most beautiful expression of young love finding each other for the first time.
Wow. Well, please join me in welcoming Caroline and Sam to the stage.
O soave fanciulla, o dolce viso di mite circonfusa al balunar. In terra avvisa il sogno che io vorrei sempre sognare.
Aspetta gli amici
amici, già mi mandi via.
Vorrei dir, ma non oso.
Di.
Se venissi con voi.
Mimì. Sarebbe così dolce restar qui, c'è freddo fuori.
E starò vicina.
E al ritorno?
Curiosa.
Dammi il braccio, mia piccina.
Obbedisco, signor.
Che m'ami di?
Io t'amo.
So La Boheme will be part of SF Opera's summer season.
Yes.
And then I understand that the new season just dropped, the lineup for the new season.
Just a few hours ago.
Oh my gosh. So give us some highlights, Matthew.
Yes, so we have this season that begins in September and then it takes a little hiatus now and then comes back in May, June. And so we've just announced the season coming up in September. And you get a sense here of just the spread of different titles and stories. And as Unsun said, opera is just about these great stories of humanity, stories that relate to our own emotions and the lives we lead. They're just told in these larger-than-life ways. And so as we continue from Lohengrin, talking about Lohengrin in the film, each season we're doing a Wagner opera that Unsun is conducting. Last season we did Tristan, this season, and then we just announced Parsifal, which is Wagner's final opera. This amazingly transcendental work, this sublime piece about the passing of tradition from generation to generation, told through the Knights of the Holy Grail. And we're building this as a brand new production. This is a big moment for us. Literally, right at the moment, they are building the sets down in Burlingame, the costumes right here in the city. So this is very much a made in San Francisco production. San Francisco has long been known as a great commissioner of new works. And of course, a lot of the pieces we do are pieces that are 100, 200 years old, but it's so important that we bring new pieces into the repertoire as well. And so we have a brand new opera, The Monkey King, which we will be doing in November. This is a telling of part of The Journey to the West, one of the great Chinese novels. And it has been delighting audiences for 400 years, and we're excited to bring it into an operatic version, which will be told in music that is both sort of action hero, but also moments of great reflection and beauty as well. In fact, if you go to the website, you can hear an aria. We've put a pre-aria up there so you can get a sense of it. And then told with amazing stagecraft, just a huge amount of magic on stage for that piece. And then bringing back a piece that we premiered in 2000, Dead Man Walking, telling the the story of Sister Helen Prejean in the book and film, of course, of the same title. And that opera by Jake Hagee has gone on to become the most performed American opera of this century. So we're bringing it back for its 25th anniversary. And then Unsun will also, each year she's doing a Verdi title, and so we have the great classic Rigoletto to open the season. And then Unsun will also be conducting Electra, one of the most monumental stories and operas of the repertoire, 100-piece orchestra, all of the just angst of Greek myth told on stage, 3 powerful singers. So really some amazing opera to look forward to.
Maestro, it's a priority of yours to have contemporary opera in the lineup, right? Why?
When we're actually performing also the pieces like from 200 or 300 years ago, but the time when they played it, it was contemporary for them. So I feel like when we play that piece, whether it's Rigoletto or Parsifal, it's also contemporary because we're performing it, you're there, so we are doing it. But contemporary pieces by a living composer is also very important because it's about today that we're living in the time, about the time, and the language and the emotions are very different. So when I really like listening to the recordings of the conductors who are dead, so to speak, because I want to always hear. We're getting further and further from the composer's time, so I want to hear the recordings who were closer to the composer's time first, what their emotion or how their habit was. So I think that changes a lot in music making as well. If you listen to the recordings close to the composer's time, it might be way slower or way faster than we might feel. Why is it that fast? And why are you talking that fast or slow? So it all changes and in our lives as well. So that's why I put also the importance on performing the contemporary pieces by living composers. Yeah.
I want to remind our audience that you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of our panelists of anything that you're hearing. So feel free to ready your questions because we will have members of our incredible staff in the audience with microphones. So if you raise your hand, they will come to you. I understand, too, that you think it's important for the conductor to be able to speak the language of the opera that they are conducting. So that means you speak how many languages?
But I don't mean that
like totally fluently. But
no. But I don't mean like all the other
conductors should do this.
That's right.
It's just a rule you set for yourself.
No, it's how I approach the score. So I speak 6 languages.
You speak 6 languages. So then what is a language that you have not learned yet, but you really want to, so you can do an opera in that language?
Russian.
Oh, Russian.
I've not conducted any Russian opera yet. We were actually planning. We planned before the pandemic. We planned it, but then it was rescheduled. But Russian opera will be my next. But before that, I need to buy the grammar book.
Oh.
For
so you
Russian.
want to know what the singers are saying. You want to know what the words.
I want to know what composer wanting to say.
Yeah, because it influences the way you will interpret.
That's right. And the pace of storytelling, the pace of their language, and also, I mean, if it's German, let's say, we have so many German composers, Wagner and Strauss or Mozart and Beethoven and everyone, but they all have different style of their speaking. It becomes their music as well. I mean, all of us also have different style of speaking. Sometimes you get to meet a person who who speaks really, really fast
Yeah.
or really slow. So when the composer writes in the score, like, go faster here, this person who speaks fast anyway, they would go really fast, So that all changes the details of music making, and I would really want to understand first what the composers really meant, and then to recreate that score in the pace of my understanding of that language and the terms that he used or they used. Yeah.
I think one of the beautiful things that you see when Unsun is conducting is just the connection to the stage. And there's a real sense of symbiosis between pit and stage. And you've spoken before, Unsun, about you are sort of the point between the audience and the stage. And so you encapsulate all of it. And when we did, when Unsun made her debut in 2019, it was with Dvořák's Rusálka, which is in Czech. And even though we had a prompter, like you saw in the film there, Unsun is giving all of the language to the singers on stage and mouthing it to them and being in the moment with them. And there's a beautiful trust in that, where I think the singers really feel that you are there with them at every moment. And again, because you have taken the time to not only learn the score, but the language as well, just as they've had to go and learn the language and understand what they're singing. So again, it just takes you to that completely different level of trust. And as a result, I think, aesthetic beauty that comes out of the performance.
But I have to probably add one probably last thing is, yes, with the text and with the singers, it's very obvious because they're using the language itself. But with the orchestra, it really affects. So in Lohengrin, because we watched the Lohengrin film now, when I put probably, 50 or more than 50 terms, like expressions, into the orchestra part, the scores that the musicians use. And for piano is in musical term like a soft, but I put next to the piano, sometimes piano soft or piano clean, piano pure, piano friendly, and or like piano devastated, or piano. So all the dramatic moments that we have to play, I put it. And you know how you're going to explain it technically, what they did, you can't. And that's probably the mystery of making music or the art, and it should also stay as mystery, because you can't really verbally explain how that happened. But I put there was a moment in the rehearsal, like a pianissimo devastated, and they played it, and I had like,
That was it.
that was it. And I asked them, like, what did you do? How did you do? And they were like, we just played it. But as you imagine that you want this sound or this sound, you can make it. And that's why I think the language or understanding language of composer is so important. Because it's not just about the lyrics that the singers have, but it's also about the sound of the orchestra as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me pause and see if we have any questions from our audience out there. If you'd like someone to bring a mic to you, feel free to raise your hand.
I think.
Thank you so much. Maestro, this is for you. I saw the documentary when it came out, and about the same time on an airplane, I got to see the documentary La Maestra about the women's conducting competition. And I don't know if you've seen it or if you had any reaction to it. Well,
I've now seen the film.
Well, I recommend it. I learned so much about conducting from both this documentary and from that. I think it's called La Maestra, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. You are going to be the music director at the SF Opera for at least till 2031, right?
right.
Your contract's been renewed. Where do you want to take it? How do you want to shape it?
Say again.
Where do you want to take it? How do you want to shape its future?
We'll see in 2031. But you know, I remember, as you say, I remember the moment our lunch after the opening of Rusalka in 2019, and Matthew and Greg, our managing director artistic, and I, three of us, we had lunch, and Matthew asked me if I wanted to be the music director at San Francisco Opera. And I asked him back, why? Because I thought the music directorship is something about creating like a long relationship. And I, of course, rehearsed with the orchestra, but it was just one performance. And you never know how the run will end, actually, at the end. So to make a decision after just one performance, it was for me probably to really think about whether I want to go that path or not. Not about the company or the orchestra, it was about me. But now the next season will be my already 5th season, and I have to say I'm very, very grateful and proud of being the music director at San Francisco, in San Francisco with all of you, but also I am very proud of my orchestra as well. I can be very specific, but also it might be very challenging to go with me, because it's, as I told you, I put a lot of pressure on me as an artist, because artists pursue always ideal, and if you're not supposed to reach ideal as an artist. If you have a feeling that you reached already ideal, then you have to retire, because there is no goal anymore. So to minimize that gap of that your ideal and of how you are, where you are today, probably it's my work, and I push myself probably, but I'm pushing my orchestra as well. But I learn a lot from them as well, because they are very experienced musicians, and they have been there in the pit probably more than 30 years and 40 years, like Rufus, and he has been probably there for 46 years. So I've learned a lot, but I'm really excited about the other 5 years with my orchestra and my company as well. And probably we can talk about today in 5 years again what we accomplished. Yeah.
So we will know it when we hear it. And
That's right.
it, basically. Are there any other questions from the audience?
I think now
Now
it's
it's on.
working. Yeah.
Oh, now, yeah, I can hear it now. This is more a thank you than a question. I wished I had a great question, but you've said so much. But I've watched a little opera over a lot of years. I think I've been going, I'm 77. I think I probably went the first time when I was about 21, and I was in Rome. And so I'm not really an expert, but the last several years, I usually go to about one opera a year. I've just been blown away. I just feel like we have like a total world-class opera right now. And I sort of, if it was a question, it would be, how did you do it? When I saw the movie, which I saw that you made, I understood part of it, but also the quality of the singers on the stage has kind of blown me away. So I don't know if you got like a whole lot of money or something as well as unsung. But I'm very honored to be here and listen to you talk. And the film, I have to say, was like I stopped going to Wagner. As I say, I go to just 1 or 2 operas a year. But I was, and then I saw the film, I think, online when there was one performance left and it was sold out and I couldn't get in. But now I will now go to Wagner next year because I had said, never Wagner, not for me. And after seeing the film, I thought, oh, yeah, just depends who's singing it and who's conducting it. And yeah, so thank you. It's just mostly a thank you.
Oh.
This might be in line with the previous question, but I know there's a plan to theoretically do another Ring cycle. Can you say anything about that production in the future? If it, I guess, any insights about if it's going to be new production, when it's going to be?
Well, we are building on the Wagner journey, and again, Lohengrin, Tristan, Parsifal, the Ring, and so as we move through this, we haven't yet announced exactly when, but that is the arc of the journey. And I think one of the important things to note, again, this is a company with a long history of Wagner. The first time we did the Ring was 1935 with Kirsten Flagstad singing Brunhilde, so the legacy here is very strong. But there is a generational shift happening as well, whether within the orchestra, the chorus, the audience. There's a lot of new people in the ecosystem of our making of Wagner at the moment. And so what I love, again, this I think speaks to the kind of arcs that you are building, Unsun, is that don't just go straight to the Ring, but really sort of build up towards it as a community and get ready for it and get excited about it. This is, again, one of the few companies in America that does the Ring and does it with regularity. And so as we go through these other Wagner operas, each of which is its own extraordinary piece, just know that it's building towards something really special coming up very soon.
Do we have time for more questions? I know we're hitting that point. One more? Taylor's the boss. One more, Taylor says.
And I will just say, while we're getting the mic there, just to the earlier point about coming to Wagner. I mean, Parsifal, we have not done Parsifal since 2000. That is really a once-in-a-generation piece. And so, as we announce that season now, and again, something that is being built right here in the Bay Area, every element of that, from the music making through to the costumes and the sets, will be an expression of the Bay Area's creative community. And so I really encourage you to go and see that. There's a translucence that you hear in Unsun's Wagner. You heard a little bit of it there in the Lohengrin, and I can assure you there's going to be something just breathtaking, deeply spiritual, deeply connected in that Parsifal. So yes, please hurry and get to Parsifal as soon as it opens, because you'll want to come back and see other performances afterwards.
Right. We're playing now, performing in 2025, so it's after 25 years.
Right.
But it took Wagner also 25 years to complete this opera, to write this opera. He started that, he put that aside, so then he continued and then put aside. So it took him 25 years
so for his deliberate.
For his last opera.
So, question for Maestro: you're in such a unique, multidisciplinary leadership role and artistic role. You mentioned that you wanted to learn Russian, and I'm curious if you could share with us areas in which you'd like to grow as a conductor.
Areas you'd like to grow as a conductor?
I don't understand. Sorry.
He said, because you mentioned wanting to learn Russian, and he's wondering other areas that you would like to grow.
As a conductor?
Yeah. Where do I begin?
I don't know, actually. I'm a person who really concentrates
on the present.
On the present, yes, and also, I mean, I was told by my agent, you're like the only one in our agency who never asks, am I going there, or am I going there? Am I going to the Metropolitan Opera or to Berlin Philharmonic or elsewhere? You never ask. And that's probably where I am and where I want to be is not in my radar, probably. It has never been. I think it's more important for me what I'm doing and how I'm doing, rather than the expectations, also the goals that people might think like that is the pinnacle of a career for a conductor. So I know sometimes the journalists say like, "Oh, your answers are boring," because you never get that one sentence that audience wants to hear. But yes, I am like who I am. So yes, probably my next goal is that I do the concert. I prepare for the concert next week in Milan, and that's my first goal of today.
It's actually interesting. I feel like it is quite consistent. A lot of the best artists will say that they have no expectations. They are not thinking or creating expectations of something. They are just in it. And I'm sure the SF Opera is very happy to have you in it with them. And I also want to let folks know that KQED will actually broadcast an encore of Journey into Lohengrin on Friday, February 28th at 9 p.m. on KQED 9. And of course, it can be streamed at any time on SF Opera's website as well. Also, for those with eclectic musical tastes, we're hosting an event looking at the Bay Area's new country music scene. This is on Tuesday, February 18th. And I just want to give a very warm thank you to the team at SF Opera, to our production team here running the show tonight at KQED Live, and of course my team at KQED. I have to thank them as well for helping me be able to do this program. And I just want to thank all of you for coming tonight for this very special evening. And last but not least, thank you, Maestro Eunsun Kim, filmmaker Elena Park, and General Director of the San Francisco Opera, Matthew Shilvock.
And thank you, Mina.
Have a great night.